when you start accepting the fact that the ego are other people's beliefs that were given to you, and you realize that the awareness is the real you, and this is another practice I teach is called press pause. You're about to make a decision, you're about to say something or not, you press pause because the ego and the subconscious react quickly. Your conscious mind, which is you're connected to your awareness, comes slowly. So you've got about a second. And if you can just pause for a second and let the conscious mind catch up, you can change your life because the information comes from up there instead of down there.
Welcome to Soul Explorers with your hosts, Gary Langley and Sally Taylor. Welcome to Soul Explorers. Sally and I are pleased to welcome Ray Catania today. Ray had a near-death experience, and it transformed his life, I would say. He is now a teacher and an author and a friend. So, Ray, welcome to Soul Explorers.
Gary, Sally, thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
We're really excited to spend some time talking to you today. And just as an introduction to yourself and a little bit of your story, tell us what it is or what events in your life led you to the work that you're currently doing. And then give us a little bit more information on what that work is.
Sure. So like Gary said, one of the biggest catalysts in my life was that near-death experience. Prior to that, I actually referred to myself as an atheist. And that was because of I guess, the childhood that I had. It wasn't particularly a happy one. And without getting into the specifics, I kind of rebelled against my parents' religion. It didn't really matter what it was. It's just I was going to rebel against it. And I went all the way to the extreme, to the other side. But I also felt like, what God would allow this to happen to a child? Why me? Why would I go through that? Right. So it's at the age of 20 when I have my NDE. And briefly, it was because there was a fire in the house. There was a gas leak from the stove. My bedroom was above the kitchen, and I was inhaling the gas fumes all night. So the fire took place in the morning when my mother had turned on the stove, but it wasn't the fire and it wasn't the smoke that got me. It was the gas that was rising and I was inhaling it. And, in that moment, I felt like I couldn't get out of the bed. I heard the fire trucks and everything coming to the house. And I tried to get out of the bed, but I felt like I was partially paralyzed and I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move, I couldn't yell. I couldn't like move my mouth muscles, which was crazy. But anyway, I managed to pull myself. My arms worked. I pulled and pulled and pulled till I got to the edge of the bed, tumbled out, hit face first on the ground. But surprisingly, when you get hit, maybe you're playing a sport or something and you take a shot and you're waiting for that pain to kick in. It's like a 2-second delay. You're like, I know it's coming. Well, I didn't have any pain. And the reason I didn't have any pain is because in that moment when I hit, I was not in the body anymore. I was above it. And it didn't scare me in the moment. What you would think that it would really freak me out, but not at all. In fact, I felt so relaxed. I felt fantastic. I felt euphoric. And I felt like I was watching a movie that was like better than 4K. It was just like so vivid, not like the way we see things regularly. Like everything was more vivid, more bright, more intensified, and just spectacular, beautiful. Adjacent to me was a huge cone-shaped white light. I hate to call it that because I'm not giving it justice. It was euphoria, painlessness. It was what I believe to be the collective, and we're all connected to that. That's our source, and that's where we go back one day. And I wanted to go into that tunnel. I wanted to enter it. I wanted to go all the way to the other side. But my father came into the room, distraught, picked me up. He was yelling for the paramedics. And I saw that and it broke my heart. because I'd never had that relationship with him. And I wanted it. So there was a being at the end of the light, which I asked if I could go back because I wanted that with my dad. And I don't know if that's the reason I got to go back, because the next thing I know, I'm back. And I'm not in his arms anymore, though. When I wake up, I'm on the living room floor and the paramedics are working on me and whatnot. And, I'm like, did you see the light? Did you hear the voice? And they're like, okay, we got to take this guy to a different hospital. And I'm like, no, 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 I feel terrific. I'm trying to tell him I've never felt better. Like, I mean, I can't even tell you what I just experienced. It was fantastic. I want to go back. But they're like, you're far from okay, kid. We're gonna bring you in. So that was the turning point. That was the catalyst. But when I told anybody about it, they shut me down. They told me I was crazy. They told me that didn't happen. And they told me this and that and the other. And finally, I just accepted that to be my truth. I was mistaken. I made it up. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I was this. And it made it easier for a 20-year-old to go through life like that. But here's what it did do to me. I didn't fear death. So I'm a 20 something year old who was kind of, you know, um, reckless to begin with. Now I really up the ante, and I'm going through my 20s in a rebellious, I don't care if I die attitude. This is not good. This is a recipe for disaster. And it's later when I have my own kids, and I was about 30 years old, that I decide that this lifestyle, now I have a reason to live. And here they are, these two tiny humans that I willed into this world. They deserve better. And I want to give them everything that I didn't have as a kid and more. So I completely changed my lifestyle, checked myself into rehab, went back to college, got a great job, did everything I could do to be a pillar of my community. And I was successful and I did well and they got everything. Um, and, but it was many, many years later when I eventually meet my second wife. My first marriage falls apart. I meet my second wife and she starts introducing me to things that, like spiritual clearings and things of this nature, and this reawakens the experiences that I had on that day. Because when you come back from, well, I don't know about everybody, but when I came back from that NDE, I was able to know things, I saw things, I could feel things. My intuition level just went through the roof, and I could even interact with the energies that were in the room. Um, so I kind of thought I was really losing it. I thought it was crazy. That's what I accepted my truth to be, is that I was losing my mind. But she was the wise one. And she was even is a doctor of psychology. And but she accepted everything I was saying and said, you know what, you're probably a psychic medium. You don't know it. This is not a big deal. Let's deal with it. And I was like, wow, you really are my soulmate. It was blown away. I was like, you are the one. And she didn't get crazy like everybody else did.
Mhm.
And she took me to a medium and we sat and we talked and I shared my experiences with the medium. And she's like, tell me what's going on. I said, sometimes I see things and sometimes they're in images on a movie screen and sometimes they're people and they talk to me and I don't think they're really there. I can't tell. And she's like, ha ha ha, me too, me too. Happens to me too. And I was like, so this is real? And she's like, oh yeah, this is real. And she goes, it's pretty surprising that you have this, and this, because men often don't. It's rare, rarer. In her opinion, it was rare for men to
Can
have
I
these abilities and
can
women
I
to,
ask you a quick question?
yeah.
Would that be all
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So did you have any of this before your near death experience? Because I know a lot of people who do go through a near death experience do open up quite a lot
Oh,
to their more spiritual capacities, their more spiritual talents.
yeah.
Was that something you had ever experienced before that,
Yeah, yeah.
or
Good
was it
question.
new?
Absolutely. Yeah, when I was a kid and I was going through those traumas and those experiences, I wanted to escape what was happening in my house. So I would hide under the bed, in a closet, in the backyard, and I would stay hidden. And this would go on for hours and hours and hours. And this is before cell phones or anything that would entertain me. I have nothing. It's just me and a wall. And I'm hiding to stay away from what's happening upstairs. So that became hours of meditation. But I didn't know that. I didn't know what I was doing. And I wanted to escape my reality so badly that I eventually started to do so. I started to break through the veil. I started to be able to feel and see energy like in a wall. I could stare at the wall and I could start to see the lines in the wall. And I didn't know what to make of that. I mean, I'm like, 7 years old. It doesn't, mean anything to me at the time. But in hindsight, when you ask a question like that, was there something? Yeah, there was. There was a lot of somethings.
And that
So
seems to be the case. Both trauma and near-death experiences seem to crack people open. And it seems
yes,
like both of those things may have been true for you.
And
absolutely.
and Ray, would you say, at the time that you had this experience, it was less well accepted than currently?
Oh
Because,
gosh.
you'd get about a 50-50 now, I think. 50% of the people would say, "Oh, that's really cool. Tell me more about what
Yeah.
happened to you." And then there's still the people that get the glazed look and don't know how to,
All
how to
we had was glaze back then.
yeah, yeah,
I'm showing my age, but yeah, all we had was glaze. And not only that, with some very religious folks, it was even worse than that. It was like,
Right.
you are this, that, demon or whatever,
right,
it was very, very looked down upon. Not so either you went in the crazy box or you went in the demon box, but there was no acceptance box. It
yeah,
just,
Right.
if it was, I couldn't find it. So
yeah,
I just closed down. Yeah.
Yeah. Except for this medium where I interrupted you in your story, who was telling you that what she didn't see this kind of level of intuitive ability in men very often.
Mhm.
So where did that go from there?
Well, she took me under her wing for the first year, which was great. And she taught me. She was my first mentor because things were happening that were out of control. When I met my second wife, I was able to interact with her dad. I didn't know it was her dad at the time, but here's this man. He's coming on the movie screen, like I described, and he's talking to me and he tells me things, and he's like, I effed up. I made a mistake. This is the first thing he ever said to me. I effed up. I made a mistake. You can help her. I cannot. Never forget those words. And I'm like, what was that? And I had no idea. This was right after she had purchased me a spiritual clearing for my birthday that year. We're in the very, very beginning of dating now. So to give you like a little idea, we're only like a couple months in. And she buys me this and it reawakens everything that had happened after the NDE. So, and it's like even more evolved because the spiritual awakening kind of woke it up. And now the veil is very thin and I can interact with these beings. And the first one I see, which I have no idea because her dad obviously is deceased, I never met him, is him coming to me. And I express this to her and I'm petrified to tell her this because it's the beginning of our relationship. And I'm like, she's going to just run away. But she didn't. And she was the one who said, that sounds like my dad. And you're probably onto something. And we need to look into that. And, I love her for that and more. But, that acceptance um, led me down a path to change the entire trajectory of my life into a way, into a realm of wanting to help other people, not just with that, but with the other things that I learned because I went on a learning spree, so to speak. Like I stopped, quit my job, went back to college for metaphysics, completing my doctorate, hopefully right now, just submitted my dissertation for the 18th time. And I'm a bit of a slow learner. I think I'm in my sixth year now, but I achieved the master's and I'm doing my doctorate. And then I also had many, many mentors that were so good. I mean, I really am so honored and blessed to have had some of the people that I've had in my life, like her, and the next one after was Joe Shield, and he's just an incredible individual, and he took me under his wing. I'm still under his wing. Like, I'm never leaving him. Like, I told him, I was like, I'm with you for life, pal. Hope you don't mind. And so, and then I've traveled and I've worked with shaman and I've explored so many different things. So there are many different modalities. And what I had to do, because I was such a skeptic of everything. Remember, I'm the atheist guy, right? When I was young. So I need some sort of, um, I guess, a plausible scientific theory. It didn't have to be 100%, but I needed something to be able to put two and two together. And, one of the first things that I was interested in was manifestation. And I used it. Admittedly, the first time I was taught it, I thought it was, not really. I thought it was a little hokey pokey, honestly. But I had a desperate need to come up with $10,000, and I only had like 2 days to do it. And it was for my son who was going to college. And I guess I overlooked paying them the final check of 10,000. They actually called me and they're like, "We're not going to let your kid on campus unless you come up with 10 grand." And I was like, I got 48 hours, and I was like trying to figure out what I can do, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait, there's this method. I was taught this method. Okay. What have I got to lose? So I try it. Then I do the meditation and I do it. You're only supposed to do it twice a day for 90 days to get a result. I did it 6 times a day on the first day and nothing transpired. And I was a little bummed out, but I'm just like, that's my backup plan, I guess, so to speak. Right. But I'm really putting everything into this because this is not for me. This is for my kid. And my kids are my why. My kids are, remember, they changed me. They did more for me than I think I did for them, because they just completely changed my life. And so I will do anything for them. So I'm doing that and I'm doing other things to acquire the money. And the mail came on the first day, but I didn't look at it. I just kind of brushed it aside. And the second day I did it 6 times. And again, at the end of the day, nothing had happened. So I start to go through the bills and it's like, they're bills, the mail are bills, right? So it's like phone bill and this bill and that bill. My tax bill was in there. And I'm like, am I doing this wrong, guys? Like, tell me, what am I doing wrong? And but I open it up and I decide to look inside, and I'm a 1099 employee. So that means I have to pay something every year, right? And I open it up, and the first page says, thank you for your business. You owe us X amount of dollars. Okay, I flip that one over. The next one says, dear Ray, you've overpaid the federal government 8,200 and something dollars and something cents. I have never gotten a refund, especially 8,200. I owe money all the time. And I read this like 6 times over and over. I just keep reading it. And I'm like, that is overpayment means refund. And then the next page says, you have overpaid the state of New Jersey, 1,800 something dollars, something. So it just barely breaks 10,000. And I just dropped to my knees, wept like a child and said, I will never doubt you again. Never. And that just opened up, you know, everything for me. So I needed to figure out how it works because in order to teach somebody else, I got to be able to back it up with something. So I started to study physics and I started to learn about energy, frequency, and vibration and how it really works. And, to simplify the law of attraction, it's really the law of vibration in effect and the law of resonance. And what it is, aligning your frequency with that of the outcome that you want or the goal that you seek. And it has to be done with emotions. Like this was the key difference when I was doing it, I had so much emotion, right? Because it was for my why. My kids were my why. I'm willing to die for my why. If you're not willing to die for your why, that's not your why. You haven't found your why yet. You have to keep looking. So there's so much emotion that went into that meditation. There was no way it wasn't going to happen. So when I started to teach this to other people, I had a pretty good success rate with most of my clients. It was above 50%. But here's the thing, the ones that weren't making it, I needed to figure out why. Why were some of them not making it? And I went back to exactly what I did. And I realized the difference is the emotion. You see, the universe doesn't speak English. It doesn't speak French, Japanese, or any other spoken language. It speaks vibration. So I have to adapt to speak vibration. And the way we do that is through emotion. And so I came up with a system called Say It Three Ways. And that is when you say something three ways, let me backtrack a little bit. Most people will say, who teach manifestation, will say, always visualize everything as though it's already happened. And, that has a lot of value. Don't get me wrong. You can't not do that step. That's important. But if you need three elements: conceivability, believability, and achievability. Any one of those is missing, it can't come to fruition. So if I say I want to be wealthy, 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 I want to be if I'm not wealthy, or I'm not, I want to, I am wealthy, right? That's past tense. I am wealthy, I am wealthy, I am wealthy. But if I'm not really wealthy, I'm not really feeling that. And I can't convince myself of that. But if you say it three ways, right? This is what I noticed that I did. I said, I want to be wealthy. I will be wealthy. I am wealthy. Now, one of those is always what? Believable, because it's real. There's no denying the reality of that fact. And it's that progression that gets us to the achievability. Now, there's more to this, the foundation meditation, I call it. But because the next step is visualize with five. After we say it three ways, we do visualize with five. And that's all past tense. Now you're living in whatever it is that your goal is. And visualize with five means you use your five senses, five physical senses, and you bring them into the sixth and you explore it in that realm. So you're taking all five physical senses, turning it in, putting it in your sixth, and sending it out on a vibrational, energetic frequency. And that was the key. 50 something percent went up to 87%. And we're just getting better and better and better. So it's tapping into the emotion. That is what was missing. So our words will evoke our emotions. So we have to use the right words to get that emotion out.
And Ray, I see people all the time continually say, well, that never happens for me. Or uh, I've heard mediums say, well, I never get names. It's like they need to drop that because they never will, as long
Right.
as they're continually reinforcing that mindset,
Exactly.
because we don't realize how powerful we are. And we know people in our lives, I think probably all of us do, who are constantly negative, and
Mhm.
they can't figure out why they keep experiencing negativity.
Right.
So what you're saying applies to our everyday life, not just specific, goals that we'd like to achieve. That's
Mhm.
part of it.
Yeah.
But it actually, your whole life experience is a
Mhm.
reflection of what you're putting out energetically.
Projecting. Yeah, totally. Our thought. One of the things that I like to start with when I work with clients is I start with thought patterns and speech patterns. The way we speak to ourselves. That's our egoic mind, right? And it's that chitter chatter that goes on in our head and tells us what to do. Don't wear that, or don't say that. You'll look silly if you do that. You're not good enough for this. You're not good enough for that, right? That's the ego is always trying to protect us to the point where it stifles us from doing anything or trying anything. Who cares if I look silly wearing this? I want to wear this. You know what I mean? Like, you got to break free from that. And it's difficult to do, but it's doable. And when you get your thought and speech patterns in alignment, like Gary said, with what it is that you want, the way you want to live, that's what comes about. Perception changes your truth, and your truth automatically changes your reality. But it starts by changing perception, and that starts by changing your thought speech patterns, the way you experience, the way you say something, the way you do something. If you say, I'm never going to do this, you're never going to do it. That's it. You've limited yourself. You've capped yourself. It's not going to change until you get rid of that thought.
I had somebody recently, I won a $500 scratch off ticket, and their response was, that never happens to me. And I said, and it never will.
There you go. You
It
just
never
you
will.
just did it to you. Right. 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 Right.
And it happens all the time to Gary. He won the
It
Does it
lottery
does.
like
really?
nobody's business. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, but he does all the time. And we have a lot of jokes going on about that, but when the world needs to help him out, it usually does.
There was a family that lived in our neighborhood who hit the lottery for the first time, right? And they were obviously, elated. And what happened was now because they hit it, they believed it was achievable.
Mhm.
So they hit it again.
Mhm.
Yep.
There's a
Okay.
perfect example of what
They
we're
hit
talking.
it again. What are the odds of the same family hitting the lottery twice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, see,
Because,
I've never hit the big one, but 1,000, 2,000, 500, pretty common.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the big prize. I think they got it was like 5 out of 6 numbers one time, and then maybe one time it was 6 out of 6. I don't know, but the bottom line is they won a lot of money, and then they believed it was doable. Once you believe it, you can achieve it.
Right.
You conceive, believe, achieve. But I look at the lottery and I say, come on, really? That's going to take a lot of work for me, a lot of inner work for me to change that thought process because I've been
Me
playing
too.
it for years without that result, right? So we have to
Right. Well, I don't even
reprogram
play for
ourselves.
that reason.
So
uh,
it's just about changing the mindset.
It is.
yeah.
And it's unfortunate that we have forgotten that this, and maybe I think it's a remembrance that's coming back into our sphere of awareness, that everything's energy and we are creators in a sense.
Mhm.
We're creating certainly our own experience and reality.
Yes.
I liked the way you added just that little taste of information about visualizing what you want as well, but almost like you're using your imagination to experience it with all of your senses. I
Yeah.
wonder if you can go just a little bit further with that because that's something that I think a lot of manifestation teachers
Mhm.
don't necessarily go that far.
Yeah.
And I think it is a sweet spot. Do you mind telling us a little bit more?
Sure, absolutely. So let's say, for example, you're trying to get a new job and you're going to go through the interview process and you really want this job. So the first thing that I tell people is picture what that looks like. Okay. When you're doing your meditation, we're going to make that the visualize with five portion, right? So first thing, the say it 3 ways is going to be I want this job, I will have this job, I have this job, right? And the second portion is you're going to be in the job and you're already in this state, which is your brainwave frequency. And when you're in there, what I want you to do is experience the job. So you walk into your office for the first time, you sit down. What does it feel like? What does your chair feel like? Is it comfortable? Is it not comfortable? What does your desk feel like? What is it made of? Is it oak? Is it something else? What does the room smell like? Is there coffee in the conference room that you can smell? Go get some coffee, shake some hands, live the situation in the third eye, live it. So all five physical, we react to the physical, but it is this one that makes it happen. But the physical is what we believe. So again, it goes back to believability. When we experience it with our physical senses, then we can project it as being believable, and then it can become reality. And I've had a lot of success with kids getting into like law school. I helped a kid get into a major law school. Another kid passed the Series 7, and sometimes I work with kids with this, and I tell them go to the campus, right? Go the day before, feel the energy of that campus. If you've never been there, go there. Don't wait until your interview date. Walk around, take your shoes off, walk in the grass, feel the energy of the place. Go to get as far as you can get to the room where you're going to have your interview. Now you're starting to see it, smell it, feel it. Now go meditate right before you go into your interview. You're going to do a 5-minute meditation. You're going to experience it again. And what you experience in your mind, 8 times out of 10 is going to be what happens in that room.
Yeah, and I think I heard you use the word earlier, resonance. And you're coming into resonance with that energetic field.
That's right.
And that seems to be the sweet spot. Now, what about the couple of times that it doesn't occur? So yes, you've got a certain number of people who have manifested this wonderful
Yeah.
thing in their lives.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about when it doesn't happen?
Yes. It always comes down to one of the three components, right? It's always going to be either the conceivability or the believability that's going to put a stop to it. Now, what aspect of our mind interacts and interferes with believability and conceivability? It's the egoic mind. The egoic mind, or the ego for short, extracts information from the subconscious. And that's all it knows. The subconscious is a data bank of all your experiences from the past, right? So if we utilize the ego and the past and we try to create a new future using what we have in the past data bank, it's probably not going to happen. So it's not until you break free from the egoic mind and go to your awareness. Your awareness is your highest level of consciousness. And according to Eckhart Tolle, and I believe this as well, your awareness is your higher self. It's connected to the collective. Now, every time we make a decision, we make it from one of those two places. It either comes from the ego or it comes from your awareness. Not most people go to the ego because that's all we know. That's that chitter chatter. It's always there. It's abundant. And we believe that that ego is us. It's not. And I can prove to you how it's not. And it can't be you, but that's another story. So when you start accepting the fact that the ego are other people's beliefs that were given to you, and you realize that the awareness is the real you, and this is another practice I teach, is called press pause. You're about to make a decision, you're about to say something or not, you press pause, because the ego and the subconscious react quickly. Your conscious mind, which is you're connected to your awareness, comes slowly. So you've got about a second. And if you can just pause for a second and let the conscious mind catch up, you can change your life because the information comes from up there instead of down there.
Isn't it ironic? We come in knowing this, actually, I think,
We do.
then we are taught that that's not the way things are.
Right.
We spend the rest of our life getting back to that knowingness, if we're fortunate, because some
Mm,
people never, hear about this or awaken to the fact that they're actually in control of their experience.
yeah.
But then we spend many years or decades coming back to the reality that this is a playground. You know,
Yeah.
we're creators. We can have it all, so to speak. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and our only limitations are our own thoughts. Yeah.
That's it. We are co-creators.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. That connection that we have with the collective, call it God, call it the universe, whatever term you wish to use, that connection that we have grants us the right to co-create. If we're a part of God and God's a part of us and God can create, then you can create. Yeah, I'm not saying you're going to move mountains, but what you can do is control your reality and perhaps give that to other people so they can control their reality. Now you're causing a ripple effect that can literally change the world. And I'm not saying I can change the world, but my goal is 1 million people, and that's what I'm trying to do.
We also need to keep in mind that on this earth plane, it's a very dense plane of existence.
Mm,
So things are not always going to be instantaneous. But,
that's right.
you have to keep at it. You have to be consistent,
Mm,
with making those changes, and then you will see results. I would concur
yeah.
with that 100%, so.
Yeah. When you get the ego out of the way, you go into a state of almost being limitless where because everything is going through the awareness and the collective, and you're emitting this frequency, and it works. Like, this is a great example, right? I think of about the cell phones, how they work. If I dial your number, your phone rings, right? Why does it ring? Because my phone, and this, I'm simplifying this, of course, adjusts to your phone's frequency and they connect, they align. Okay. There's no ego in there that's blocking that from happening. It's frequency to frequency. Like frequencies will always attract. That we know that. Like the radio, you dial. You remember the old-fashioned radios? I'm showing my age now with the dial, and if you were a little bit off, you got static and you can't hear your song. Okay, so same thing. You've got to be tuned in. There's nothing blocking that. If there's something blocking that, then you don't get to hear your favorite song. It's the same thing with creation, the exact same thing. You put out the direct frequency of the thing that you want, and you are dedicated to it, and you do it over and over and over. It is going to find the match, because everything, like you said earlier, Gary, is made of energy, and energy has a frequency to it. So inanimate objects have a frequency. You don't have to be a living thing. And Eckhart Tolle would argue that everything is living in one way or another,
Sure.
and everything is on a frequency. So it's about you adjusting yourself to that frequency.
Well, and
And
it's like the desk in front of me is not really a solid object in
not
the
at all.
greater sense.
Right.
It's a bunch of moving particles with a lot of space in between them. But
Yep.
we have a consensus agreement that we're going to see this as a solid object, and that's why it appears that way to us.
That's right.
Really, when we touch it, what we're feeling is the repulsion of energy. We're not really touching in the way we think we do. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm going down
Less
the
than
rabbit.
1%, less than one, arguably less than 1% matter. So the rest of it is space.
Yeah,
What's in the space? Energy.
yeah.
That energy's on a frequency.
So let me take this conversation maybe in a slightly more challenging direction. What do you say to people who experience real challenges in their lives and feel like, they've kind of, what their experience is certainly not what they wanted, and they don't even n- see or understand how they could have possibly created such a thing that they would have never wanted, right? um what do you say to sort of their understanding of the situation and what they're experiencing?
Okay, good question. So, the majority of the things we can be proactive, and we can create, but we don't create everything. Why? Because there's other people creating too, and those other people have their manifestations, and those manifestations are going to interfere with our lives, possibly. If you want to use the word interfere, it's going to overlap. So, right, a bad guy kills a good guy. Now that good guy's family is distraught because it was someone else's manifestation that overpowered that person, and now there's this tragedy. And why did it happen? Right? I don't have the answer as to why it happened, but what I can tell you is it wasn't your manifestation that made it happen. It was the third party, the murderer, who did that. Right? Evil does not come directly from awareness. It's in form. When awareness, or when our life force reaches the form determines what it wants to do with its life source. And that's where evil can come from. Doesn't have to come from that, but that's one major negative example of something that can overpower you, and you had nothing to do with it. But the recovery process, it's going to be long, it's going to be big, it's going to be intense, but it is doable. It is.
And I think sometimes we collectively as a species create as well, that it's not even necessarily any given individual that's creating, that if we have a mass resonance,
Yeah.
we create as a group as well, what we do and don't want to experience. Do you agree with that?
Totally. Yes. That's the collective in action, right? We're all connected to that collective. And as a group, we can really make a difference. If we all came together and we just tried to help each other instead of harming one another, the scale of good to bad would just go all the way to the other side. But we have to all agree to that. You know what I mean? It can't be like half of us do, half of us don't, or you've got various stages of good and bad too, right? So you have all the gray areas. But if we come together as a collective, we can change anything. literally anything we want.
Yep.
We have a lot of power that way.
And all we have to do is look at the world today to see what the collective is creating. And I think we're in a transition point. So remember the old phrase, it's always darkest before the dawn.
Oh
And
yeah.
we may be in that darkest point right now in some ways.
I mean, we have experienced some very dark points in history. World
Oh,
War
yeah.
One, World War II, the Great Depression. I mean, those were back to back to back. So we've really experienced some terrible things and been able to come through them. So this is something we can come through too, but
Sure.
we really have to come together and want it. What I think gets in the way, and this will go back to the egos, but what I call them separators. Separators are what we labels that we use to define ourselves, and it's pretty much the worst thing that we can ever do. We define ourselves by either race, religion, creed, color, political party, anything at all. Those the more degrees of separation you have between you and the collective, because you're labeling yourself, you're putting yourself out now and out into this corner, and you're adopting other people's beliefs, and it's not you anymore. It starts to become a collaboration of others, and that's egoically driven. So it's another reason you've got to get rid of the ego. We want to be accepted so badly that sometimes we'll join a group that we know is terrible, but we want to be accepted so badly that we'll go along with their ridiculous beliefs. Those separators have got to go. And we're just spirit living in a human form. That's it.
I would like to comment on one thing you said. I don't think it's a matter of getting rid of the ego, but keeping it in its lane because
Yeah,
it does have a function.
it sure does. Yeah.
It keeps us alive
We
sometimes.
would be extinct if we didn't have an ego. Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
You can't get rid of it, but you got to crack it. You got to know when it's to your benefit and when not. And that's where the press pause comes into play. If you press pause, your conscious mind can catch up and give you a little direction and say, this is one of those times when I don't think the ego's got this correct. You ever sit in a scary movie, right? And the guy comes out with the axe and he's about to kill somebody, and you go, oh my god. You ever think about why you do that? You're in a movie theater,
that's your ego
right?
uh, protecting
That,
you.
that's right. And it gets the information from the subconscious. The subconscious can react so fast. Stranger danger. And your ego jumps out in front and goes, we got to get out of here. Oh my God, run, run, run. But then the conscious mind catches up and goes, relax. You're in a movie theater, you amongst friends. That's not real. But that takes a second. Hollywood has known this forever and they've been using it effectively, right?
Well, and I would claim maybe not even just Hollywood, right?
Right,
And
right.
I love that you brought up this idea of separators, because Gary and I were having just this discussion before we started today, and that was around identifying yourself as if you are your political party or your news source or your religion or whatever other thing it is you define, your race, as you said, what
Yeah,
thing it is you define yourself by, as if that is you.
right.
And so
And
when somebody attacks that thing, you feel like they're attacking you.
that's right. That's exactly it. And we take that the better we can abolish these. And I know that this is a big ask, and it's probably something that something tragic has to happen for everybody to wake up and realize that that's the case. But we really have got to be brave enough to go out on our own, be our own person, and accept that everybody you interact with is a part of you,
Mhm.
and give that person the opportunity to be that.
Right.
Look, we don't all have to believe the same thing. I mean, people all the time, okay, your beliefs differ than mine, great, let's hug. Who cares? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's fine. I welcome the difference of opinions. We need that.
And once again, that's people at different frequency levels,
Yes.
different levels of resonance,
Yes.
and accept that and know that they're growing just like we're growing. And
Mhm.
anybody who thinks they've arrived needs to go back to the back of the line because there is no arriving.
There is no arriving. That's right. There is no arriving. Not in this realm anyway. That's for
So,
sure.
Ray, you've written a couple of books. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah. The first book I wrote was The Atheist and the Afterlife. And it is the story of my life from how I went from atheism to becoming a believer through the NDE and a lot of the tragic stories that transpired to get me to that awakening process. The second book is called You're Still Alive. Now Act Like It. And that book picks up where the other one left off. There are still some stories with morals and things that I've used, but it's more about the techniques. I went back to see, how did I have this spiritual awakening? Like, what exactly took place? How can I give this to other people? And I figured out different methods that I actually used, and I put that into the second book. And the title is like live every moment as though it's your last breath, because we never know when it's really going to be. God knows, I can attest to that, so take the tools, use them, disregard what you don't like, take what you like, and I hope people will that will resonate with them, hopefully. Thank you
Uh,
for letting me say
you
that.
Yeah, sure, and you have a website, correct?
Yes, raycatania.com is, and if you're interested in coaching or other things, and the new course that's coming out, which will be called Say It Three Ways, will be on there shortly. You can always sign up to my newsletter and find out when that'll be released. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be um, help a lot of people.
Good. Well, we're gonna put that information in the notes so that all the
Absolutely.
viewers can
Thank you.
access
Know
it.
where to find you. And I love that you have turned your spiritual awakening into teaching
Mm,
others how to experience these things for themselves, because I'm a teacher by background as well, and I've opened up a lot of, intuitive capacity over the
mm,
years of my own expansion. And while it's nice to serve people with those abilities, it's even better to teach them how to do it for themselves.
right,
And
right.
that's the higher path, I think, for the psychics and intuitives and just the people who have had these big spiritual shifts in their lives, is
Mhm.
to share it and show other people that they are the same.
Yeah,
It takes me back to, you can give a man a fish and feed him, or you can
yeah,
teach him how to fish and he can feed himself for a lifetime.
that's
So,
right.
you know,
Yeah, my goal when I coach is to have you not need me as your coach.
mhm.
That's the goal from the very first day, right? So, granted, I'd love to have people forever. I mean, that would be fantastic, and I miss them when they leave. But they leave because they have the information they need to recreate their own lives and move forward.
Yeah.
And that's the greatest thing
Well,
that I can do.
Ray, before we wrap up, what would if you were to give a message to our viewers, what would you say at this point? And
I think one of the biggest things we kind of covered is that we're all one. That's really the biggest message here. Lose the separators. Don't define yourself by someone else's idealism, what someone else believes you should believe. Look deeply into yourself, find your own self, and acknowledge other people's beliefs when they don't align with yours. It's not an attack on you, it's just a difference of opinion, and it doesn't have to be destructive. It can be the opposite. It can be a great thing. I learn from other people all the time. There's people that are always going to know more than I do, and I'm going to learn from them. And then there's going to be people that I can give my knowledge to and bring them to my level. That's what makes us a powerful society. We're all one. We're all returning to that light that I saw on that day.
yeah, beautifully said. Ray,
Thank
we
you.
really, really enjoyed having you today, and maybe sometime you can come back and visit with us again. We'd love to have you.
I would love that.
And Sally, do you have a few words?
Oh, just to say that I'm already a fan. And I have not yet had an opportunity to read your books, but I'm excited to add them to my bookshelf
Thank you.
and learn more.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Well,
Thanks,
thanks
guys.
for being with us.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.